guys, welcome to another Handy Quilter Sweet 16 Sunday. Thanks to Handy Quilter Australia. I'm Paula Storm and today we're going to do some embellishment on our piece we started last week. Last week we started out making, in my case I'm making a table runner, but you might like to make a cushion or even a quilt. The choice is yours. So last week we started out doing some piecing on the Sweet 16 and this is what we ended up with. I just cut, or I had a leftover piece of batting that I've placed underneath, and then I've just done some piecing work using the Sweet 16 after I cut my pieces using the Accuquilt Go. So this is what it looks like at the moment. Just lots of strips that have been quilted. As I mentioned, I only used batting. I didn't add a backing fabric at all yet, but we're going to do that next week. So today we're going to add some embellishment. I've got a new pattern which is an applique bundle. Basically it's just 4 different flower designs that you could use in any way you choose. You could put them on a quilt, you can put them on cushions, table runners like we're doing today. And this is one of the designs. This is actually an enlarged version that I've done using my needle turn without the needle turn technique. So basically I've turned under all my edges and then glued it all together to make one flower. So this is the 15-inch block. In the pattern it has flowers that will fit perfectly on a 10-inch block, but it also gives instructions to enlarge those flowers up to a 15 or even a 20-inch block. So you could make a really beautiful centerpiece using these designs. Now this one I've classed as a beginner piece. So there's 2 beginner flowers and there's an intermediate and then an advanced. And there's also tips of how to make the more advanced projects a bit easier as well. So you could definitely use them in any way you like, but today I'm going to make it a bit easier and I'm actually going to use the Accuquilt Go and I'm going to fuse my flowers on. So I've decided to use this fabric dye, which is the flower powered dye from Accuquilt, and this one's designed by Sarah Videla, and it's just a beautiful dye. It actually looks like this, so lots of different petal sizes and also the center of course for your flower. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to grab out my fabrics, and I've chosen fabrics. I actually really liked this colour scheme, so I've used some of the fabrics I've used in that flower, and I've just picked out a heap of different colours. As you know, I like a lot of variety. I like to work scrappy, so I've just picked out a heap of fabrics in pinks, aquas, some purples. I'm not going to go into too much detail on my fabric, how I choose my fabrics, because basically I want you to come and do a workshop with me. So today I'm just going to work through showing you how to fuse all of your fabric and put it onto the piece and then finish it on the Sweet 16. So I'm going to get out the Accuquilt. Actually I'm going to iron some fusible webbing onto my fabrics first. So in this case I'm using some Tilda Fix Light. It's basically just a fusible web. You could use a Visor Fix, steamer seam light, things like that. I just like a nice light fusible web that's not going to make my piece too stiff. Okay, so I'm just going to measure my dye now. I want to be as economical as possible with my fabric, so I don't want much wastage. So what I'm going to do is just take a ruler and lay it on top of the dye. I might actually have to turn it that way. And what I'm trying to do is work out what's the smallest piece of fabric I can get away with so that I'm not going to waste any fabric. Now I can see if I just go to a little bit to the side over here, and I'm going to be able to get everything there cut out beautifully. If I go down a fraction here, and if I look up the side there, about 5 inches is going to just get it. So I might actually cut a little bit bigger than that, so maybe 5 1/8 inches is going to be perfect. And going this way I'm going to need about 7 inches. So just to cut the petals, not the circle at this stage, I need about a piece about 5, or just over 5 inches by 7 inches. And so what I'm going to do is work out how many fabrics I want per flower, and I'm going to cut those out. And by doing it this way, I'm actually going to get 3 flowers all at once, and I can overlap those petals or I can make them individual flowers. Okay, so I've cut out all my pieces of fabric, and I've also cut some pieces of the fusible web, And so I'm just going to iron those to the back of the fabrics. You don't have to be as neat as this. You could absolutely use just little scraps of fabric that you've got left over from another project. But because I was cutting this from yardage, I've just cut some squares, and all I did was stack all of the fabrics on top of each other and cut them all in one go. Because you don't have to be particular, it's really quick and easy. What I love about doing it this way is I don't have to trace out all my individual petals. I don't have to trace out my design on my fusible web. I don't have to cut it out with scissors. I can just do it all in one go. So it is a little bit of prep work up front, but once you get the fusible web ironed on, it takes seconds. And you're left with little pieces, so you could go back in and cut out other shapes with your scissors, and it's already got the fusible web ironed on for you. So quick and easy, lots of fun. Okay, now I've also done one centre or one yellow for the centre of the flower. I'm going to cut some smaller ones for the smaller flowers as well. Okay, so I've got all my pieces cut out. Now I need to lay them onto the die to cut them out. So basically you can cut up to 6 layers of fabric at a time with the Accuquilt Go. It's less with the Baby Go and obviously more with the Studio. So with this fabric, because we've got the fusible web on it, it's classed as a half a layer for the fusible web and 1 layer for the fabric. So we can cut 4 layers with the fusible web on it at a time. So that's what I'm going to do. I'm just going to stack them on top. Because you've got the different coloured foam, you can actually see exactly where you need to place it. So I'm just going to place that one there, and then I'll stack everything else on top of it to make sure that I'm going to get those perfect pieces cut out. So that's 2. Okay, and so I'll pop my 4th layer on, and then I'll put my cutting mat on top, bring it over here. You can cut from both directions, but I just feel you can see it easier coming from this way. And then all I need to do is start cranking. And you'll see it'll cut perfectly every time. There we go. So I'll just slide that off the top. And now you'll be able to see I can just peel off all those excess bits. And I'm left with my perfect petals. There we go. So you can see there's hardly any excess there at all. And from these little bits, I could even cut out little petals or something like that from those pieces and reuse those. So there we go. That's just the papers the backings come away there, but that's fine. I can definitely use that. So there's 4 lots of petals in one cut. I've got another 4 lots of fabric here. Again, I'll just remove the lint. You don't have to worry too much about that unless there's pieces stuck down in the blades, but there's none of that there. So I'm just going to lay my next one on top and cut another 4 layers of fabric. And as you can see, it's a huge time saver without having to trace all of those shapes and then sit down and cut out all those petals by hand. And then I'm actually going to lay my, my circle on the bottom there as well. I'm just going to tuck it underneath to make sure it's cut perfectly. Pop my mat back on top. Just keep in mind that you will go through the cutting mats a lot quicker than you'll go through the dies. So just try and move the location of the mat each time so that you're not cutting through exactly the same spot. And that'll make your mats last a lot longer. There we go. And so that's all of the pieces cut out now for our piece. There's a beautiful circle. So you can use that circle for any piece really. You don't have to just use it for these flowers. I found a really great die that had another flower design on it, but it had a perfect 1-inch circle. And I had to cut out a heap of, I was making some toys and I had to cut out a heap of little eyes. And it took me hardly any time at all to cut out all those eyes. With the one die, whereas if I was sitting there by hand cutting them out, it would have taken me hours and hours. So these dies are really great and multi-purpose too. You could even use these instead of as a leaf, instead of as a petal, I could use that as a leaf and tuck it under a stem or something. So they're very much multifunctional. Okay, so now we've got all the petals cut out, we'll pull out the fabric and have a play with the layout. Okay, so I've got all my paper taken off and I've just done a quick layout. You can see here I've got all 3 layers stacked on top of each other. So I could do a beautiful flower like that, or I could take all of these petals off and make 3 separate flowers, which is what I'm actually going to do. So I can do one like that, and then I could have another one over here maybe. And overlapping them looks quite cute as well. So I can have them sitting over the top of each other. And then of course I would just need to cut out some more circles to fit on top. So I could do like that. I could spread them out a bit more. I can put another one up the top here. I could have all of the fabrics the same, so I could use, you know, all of the spot. For the big flower, I could do less petals, so I could do something like that, which is just 6 petals instead of the full 8. So that's looking quite cute. I've also found that with my leftovers, so this is one of the leftovers that we cut from earlier, there's a section down the bottom here that's actually going to fit to cut another piece. So just by laying it on top there, I can see that I can get another small petal from that section. So what I'm going to do is get the Accuquilt back out, just trim off the fabric here and here, and I'm going to run that through the Accuquilt again so I can get a whole nother flower. So here we go, I've gone back to the Accuquilt and I've cut all of these fabrics from the leftovers, from the scraps. So I'm going to get a whole nother flower, maybe even another 2 flowers, which is going to beautifully fill up the piece and give us a nice finished product. So I'm going to play around with layouts, and when we come back we'll be over at the machine and we'll be stitching it all down. Okay, so we're over at the machine now. I've got everything ironed into place. I'm happy with my layout. And what I'm going to do now is just do some raw edge applique. So I've chosen to use a blending thread, and because I don't want to change out threads every 5 minutes, I've decided to go with a cream, actually I think it's white bottom line, so it's a really super fine thread that will actually tend to blend in with everything. So I'm just going to start with my big circle here, and I'm just going to basically bring up my bobbin as I normally would. And I'm just going to run around the outside of the piece. I'm going to keep my setting fairly slow at this stage because I want to be fairly accurate, just staying fairly close to the outside of the piece. And what this will do is it'll just hold everything in place and give a nice raw edge applique look. So there we go, I've gone around once, and I'm actually going to go around 2 or 3 times just to make sure that all of the edges are caught, and then I'll move on to the petals. So I'm back to the start, and I've gone around 3 times around the circle, and you don't want to be exactly on the top of your stitches every time. You do want to vary it, and that will build up a little bit of thread and it'll give a really nice finished look. So now I'm going to move out to the petals, and I'm going to go around each petal, and I'll probably do the whole thing and then do the whole thing again, and I'll again do 3 rounds of each petal. And just a reminder, at this stage I still don't have a backing on my piece. I've just got the batting, and I will add the backing after I've done this step, because what we're going to do next week is come back in and do some really nice quilting in the background. So you won't see all of this raw edge applique on the back of your piece. set on about 50%. I'm actually going to drop that back down to about 40, just because I'm feeling like I'm not very accurate. I'm swaying a little bit with the speed, so I'm just going to slow it down a fraction so I can go a bit slower with my hands, and hopefully that will improve my accuracy. Yep, that's done the trick. So we'll keep going all the way around the flower. I'll do the whole big flower first, then I'll go around a second time. I'll then check and see if I feel like it needs another row of stitching, and we'll go from there. And there we go. So I hope you've enjoyed this week's Sweet 16 Sunday. I'll be back next week, and we'll finish off our table runner piece with some actual quilting, and also of course the binding. So thanks for joining me, and I'll see you next week.